Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Marshall Seas, working with Cheryl Lemke this morning. We've had some very, very rough weather in the central and southern plains over the last couple of days. As much as 10 inches of rain has fallen, much of that due to thunderstorms, and some of those thunderstorms have also had some damaging winds packed with them. When you get that kind of rain, too, and you get that saturated ground, you can get more trees can topple over because of the looseness of the soil. So some major travel problems too. We also have some developments in the tropics this morning. We have a tropical storm now, Lisa. Lisa sitting out in the Atlantic and headed to the north-northwest at this hour. Let's detail it for you this morning as we turn our attention toward the tropics first with your tropical update. Then we'll show you where the likelihood for severe weather is later this afternoon. First off, just to kind of put this in perspective for you, generally speaking, over all the years that records have been kept, peak of the hurricane season is generally around September 10th. And then you notice it moves on a decline. But notice also, as we head down the hill here, there's a little upward trend, and that's generally in the beginning of October, right toward the end of what's called the Cape Verde season, developments of these tropical waves that move off the African coast and then begin to move across the Atlantic. The Cape Verde Islands are sitting off the coast of Africa. Now, the first week of October, we've seen tropical storm formation in any of these areas, 84 storms since 1886, which is about 111 years, notably predominance out in the Caribbean too, but if you count them all out in the Atlantic, a lot of them have developed out here also. Now, out in the Atlantic, we do have Tropical Storm Lisa. Lisa was named by the Tropical Prediction Center yesterday. And Lisa currently is no threat to land, and that's good news. Remember, we had 3 after we had to put up with George. There were 3 out in the Atlantic, none of which affected any land areas. Well, now we have another one, Lisa, and it looks like Lisa's going to make the same kind of impact. Out in the Caribbean, we have an area of disturbed weather that we're monitoring as well. Looked like this area was going to move across Central America yesterday, but some of the computer models kind of linger it here and then perhaps move it in a northerly trend. So we're going to be monitoring that situation. Out ahead of Lisa, have an upper level low that is creating a lot of a shearing environment, and that's what's protecting the Lesser Antilles currently from Lisa's impact. Lisa is centered at 17.2 north, 49.4 west, 710 miles east of the Leeward Islands, winds at 45 miles per hour, moving north-northwest at 7, barometric pressure about 1,006 millibars. Here's the convection center of circulation over in this region to the east of the center of circulation, and the shear around this trough is blowing off the tops of these thunderstorms as Lisa is tending to move in this direction, much more toward the open Atlantic than it is to the west. There's a concern with this. This is a tropical wave moved off the African coast yesterday. Looks like there might be some rotation to this. This is a spawning ground or the area that spawned George, but it also would have a pretty hostile environment that will confront it out in the mid-Atlantic before it would make it all the way across, but it certainly bears monitoring. And again, we are watching this area of disturbed weather in the Western Caribbean for possible development over a relatively long period of time, but this again is a breeding ground for tropical storm formation this time of year. Threat for severe weather right along the Gulf Coast today, East Texas and Louisiana. We're going to be watching this area for the potential of damaging winds and continuing very heavy rain.
Tropical weather systems are affected by so many variables.
We constantly monitor the situation.
If someone is safer by watching the Weather Channel, that's what it's all about.
This program was sponsored by Walls, leading the way outdoors.
If you spend any time in the cold, you should know Walls has clothes to keep you warm. We've been keeping active folks comfortable for over 50 years with clothes for winter's worst. because we know the weather won't give you a break. Unless you take one. Walls, leading the way outdoors.
Walls quality outerwear is available at a retailer near you.
Why are business travelers choosing Sleep Inn? The well-lit grounds, the electronic locks, the walk-in showers, complimentary breakfast. Because it's a place that understands the needs of the business traveler. It's all.
This edition of Storm Watch is sponsored by Honda Generators. Good morning, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. I'll talk about some of those strong storms and the flooding occurring in the southern plains to the Texas coast. But first, let's check on our new tropical storm. And here's Mr. John Hope.
Well, thank you, Mark. And we do have a new tropical storm. Hurricane season is not over yet, but the tropical storm we have, this is Lisa. It is far out in the Atlantic Ocean. It is not coming this way toward this part of the world at all. And we don't expect it to. We expect it to move off towards the northeast and on out of the way. Elsewhere, we're watching a little bit of disturbed weather here in the southwest Caribbean Sea. And just off this picture, I can't show it to you here, we have a little disturbance off the African coast. We'll detail all that in just a moment. First of all, let me show you the latest particulars on Lisa, centered 18.0 north, 48.3 west. And as you can see, that's 790 miles east of the Leeward Islands. But notice it's already moving toward the northeast, and that is moving it away from this part of the world. We think it's going to continue to do that. We think also that it might pick up a little strength. It's up to 45 miles an hour now. We think it'll get a little bit stronger as time goes by. Looking at the visible satellite picture this morning, it's a little bit better organized than it was yesterday in the sense that we have the circulation center now under these bright white clouds, and that tells us it's not encountering quite so much shear as it did 24 hours ago. This is the infrared picture where we enhance the tops and where you see the darker colors here, the reds and so on. That's where the heavier rain is. You can see from the southwest, though, that we do have some southwest winds heading in towards it. So that's going to limit how rapidly this system can develop. Looking at this system now in the Caribbean Sea, certainly nothing very organized down here at all. There is evidence that we have a low pressure center down here somewhere very far to the south, about 11 degrees. And looking at the future here, we think there's some suggestion this could get better organized as time goes by. Here we are out in the mid-Atlantic, and here we see Lisa again, and already moving toward the northeast. Now, I mentioned that we have a feature I wanted to show you here off the coast of Africa, and it's getting very, very late in the year for anything to develop out here and be able to come on across. Now, the only way that could possibly happen is for it to stay pretty far south. Well, it is pretty far south. We have a low center out here. It's only about 8 degrees north. So we're going to be watching this with some interest. It's better part of a week even away from the island. So right now, of course, it's so far away we wouldn't consider it any threat at all because there are a lot of hazards that it has to overcome before it gets to this part of the world. Now, looking at the hurricanes for 100 years, we're past the peak of the hurricane season, but notice we have a secondary peak here in October. We're just about to approach that. Most of these systems have developed in the Caribbean. Well, this is the normal number of storms we have. Now, today we've had 12 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes, so we're just a bit above normal. Well, we have some pretty stormy weather in the southeast, so here's Mark to bring you the details on that. Mark?
All right, thanks, John, and thank you for that informative update there. Still the potential for some severe weather today into tonight here in the lower Mississippi Valley. Most of the worst storms have moved away from the Texas coast, but very rough in the western Gulf. Recent days we've seen very heavy rains here. Flood watches still out from Illinois to southeast Texas. Looking at your Doppler radar estimates of precipitation, you can see that the heavier rains now have focused from Louisiana down to southeast Texas. And that's the way it looks on the radar right now. This is where you see your heavier rain. 10 storms headed into western Louisiana. Farther north, showery and breezy, St. Louis to Chicago. Minneapolis dry now, but we think you could see some showers later as this upper low swings across your neighborhood. Stay with us. Coming up next, Weather Center.
From the Midwest to the South, rain and possibly thunderstorms are part of today's weather story. Details and a look at weather in your area next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by Honda Generators. Power when you really need it.
There are some people who prefer to be left in the dark. But if you prefer the light, you need a Honda Generator. They're easy to start, efficient, and quiet. But best of all, they're reliable.
Honda. That thing always works. Always.
Honda Generators are available at a dealer near you.
The Storm Watch is sponsored by Walls. We'll be talking a little bit about the threat of severe weather. We've had a couple of tornado warnings in Louisiana and some severe thunderstorm warnings in Michigan as well. We don't have any tornado warnings in effect right now. Otherwise, I'd show them to you right off the bat. But instead, we'll put that off for a moment and start with our tropical update and Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Jill, and welcome to the Tropical Update. Good thing we don't have too much to be concerned about tonight, but let me show you the few things we're looking at. One, of course, is this frontal boundary coming into the Gulf of Mexico. It's associated with some very, very heavy lightning out off the coast and is a marine problem, but it's not a tropical development problem right now. We're looking at a disturbed area of weather down here in the southwest Caribbean Sea, and I'll show you that in close-up in just a second. And, of course, we've got our tropical storm Lisa out here heading to the northeast, away from land, which is great news. Let's give you the latest information on Lisa right now. As of 5 p.m., 18.9 north, 48.1 west. That's about 875 miles east of the Leeward Islands, which are about right in here, and it's moving away. It's moving to the northeast at 12 miles per hour. Winds still 50 miles per hour. And that drifting buoy is still caught up in the circulation and still measuring some pretty good winds out there, and that's why the Hurricane Center's got it up at 50 miles per hour. If we look at it on the infrared satellite imagery here, you can see that there's still a pretty good area of deep thunderstorm activity. The circulation center's shifted off to the west just a little bit, and you see this big dagger of westerly wind going right into the heart of the convection, and that's not associated with the development at all, but rather demise of the circulation. And we can see that on the larger scale, this big broad area of westerly wind flowing right into and over the top of the circulation, so we don't expect this to develop too much. We can see it on a larger scale on our water vapor imagery. Here's our storm here. You can see all the way across the Gulf of Mexico and the central Atlantic basin westerly winds, which are very good news for tropical development. The only area we have to be concerned about is right down in here. We have an upper level anticyclone, westerly here and easterly here. You can see them going two different directions. I'll show you in just a second what we have to worry about there. And here it is here, low pressure area out in here, and this is the time of year we have a tropical low pressure axis that dangles out into the Caribbean Sea from the Pacific for about 3 weeks. And during that time period, we often get development that slides up to the north. And we can see that when we look at our tropical origins, October 1 to 10, you can see most of them cluster right in that area. We'll keep an eye on that. Right now, pressures are not falling, and we're not too worried about it. Further out off the coast of Africa, we do have one tropical low pressure system at fairly far south latitude, about 8 north, moving west, but right now is showing no signs of development. Just as a recap for our tropical season, 1998 so far, 12 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 2 majors, and on average we have 10, 6, and 2. So we're a little bit above average overall. Briefly looking at the tropical Pacific, not too much to worry about there. A lot of random deep thunderstorm activity, but we're in generally good shape there. Let's go back to Jill and that severe weather across the south now.
All right, thanks, Steve. And we do now have a new tornado warning in effect in Louisiana and Assumption Parish. Sheriff's Department have reported a severe thunderstorm with a possible tornado just west of Napoleonville, and it's moving north at 15 to 20 miles per hour. If you are in Assumption Parish in Louisiana, please take cover immediately. We've already had a report of one tornado touchdown today. We've had some other warnings, but nothing confirmed. You can see just the mass of thunder showers coming in here. We actually have two separate areas with a threat of severe weather. We'll take you down south first off and show you into Louisiana. Again, it looks like it's these cells right in here, Assumption Parish. You can see how everything is moving to the north, a possible tornado. Otherwise, expect gusty winds, a lot of lightning, definitely some heavy rain with these thunderstorms. And after the main line goes through, you have a period of rain, and then, well, things will actually start to quiet down, although it may take a while. And in the meantime, flash flood watches are also in effect. Farther north in Michigan, we also have some strong to severe thunderstorms. We've had a few warnings in here. They're also moving to the north at maybe 15 to 20 miles per hour. You can expect strong wind gusts and lightning and perhaps even some hail. Stick with us. Coming up next on Weather Center, we'll detail where the severe weather threat is, and we'll check your forecast too.
Umbrellas will come in handy and raincoats are required in areas from the Midwest to Texas. An update on the rain is next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Walls, leading the way outdoors.
If you work outside for a living, you should know Walls makes clothes to fit any job. We've been keeping working folks comfortable for over 50 years, with clothes for every season. Because we know working outside isn't a picnic, unless it's lunchtime. Walls.
Welcome to Storm Watch. This is brought to you by Touchstone. Well, we've got a few areas to talk about in the tropical update. We're going to be focusing on an area of disturbed weather in the southwestern Caribbean and the possibilities or some speculation about development or at least some features surrounding it. And also, we still have a tropical storm in the Atlantic, and then we'll return to the U.S. and focus on the flooding and severe weather potential. Let's talk now about the tropical update. We'll begin with the big picture as we take you through the Atlantic Basin. Yes, it's not over yet. In fact, we got a little bit of a secondary peak still ahead of us around mid-October, going into the latter part of October. Of course, September the 10th is the peak. But let me take a look at the big features here. We've got a disturbed area in the southwestern part of the Caribbean right here. And we also have some cloudiness in the western Gulf of Mexico. No development imminent here, but this is the area we're watching very carefully in the southwestern Caribbean. And also, we've got a tropical storm, which we'll be watching too, but it's moving away from the U.S. Let's focus first on this area right here that is showing some good, healthy signs of deep convection. We'll be watching this in that it's a climatologically favored area this time of the year for development. This whole area in the southwestern part of the Caribbean, the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. And with the frontal boundary in place, the one that's been bringing the rough weather over the south central plains, this area of disturbed weather could start moving northward, but it's been fairly disorganized, as has this area across the southwestern part of the Caribbean. But it could be pulled northward in time, and we'll be watching it carefully for you. Right now, it's pretty disorganized and nothing in the way of a definite swirl at the surface. But anything in this area of the tropics bears watching, because you see by our points of origin, let me step back here, from October the 1st through the 10th, often when they have occurred between 1886 and 1997. There's been 84 named storms, or 84 storms, let me put it that way. Many of them have been in the southwestern Caribbean, so that's why it bears watching. Also, we want to show you Tropical Storm Lisa. Now, this is being sheared considerably from the southwest and the west. We've got the westerlies working on it, but winds of 50 miles per hour around the center of circulation, moving toward the northeast at 12 miles per hour. That's away from the U.S., away from the islands, from the Caribbean. It's expected to become extratropical or non-tropical over the next few days. It could strengthen a little bit in time, not because of any tropical mechanisms, but because of something like a frontal boundary may work on it to strengthen it, just like the same fronts that create storms in the U.S. We've got a mechanism like that. But other than that, the center is probably in the southwestern part of this whole complex that you see here, with a lot of the storminess because of the westerlies being pushed to the east. But it is still pretty deep, but it's a tropical storm, so it has to be somewhat of a player here, but it's moving away from land and away from the U.S., away from the Caribbean, and it's not expected to be a big feature in terms of the U.S. Nothing to worry about here, but some maritime interests do need to keep an eye on Tropical Storm Lisa. This bears watching right here. This is a disturbed area that came off the west coast of Africa a couple of days ago. It's fairly far to the south. If it was farther to the north, it would probably be experiencing what Lisa is, some pretty good shearing. But this bears watching. It would have a long way to go to journey across the Atlantic, but we'll be keeping an eye on this area of this tropical low, if you will, off of the coast of Africa. So far this season, 1998, we've been a little above average. We've had 12 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. The major hurricanes are about on par, but we're a little above average in the named storms and the hurricanes. Let's go now to the Eastern Pacific. Not much going on at all, no organization, but if anything does develop, it would more than likely be close to the coast, but nothing going on now. Let's return to the U.S. of A, and we find a frontal boundary that is moving slowly toward the east, and as it does so, it's producing flooding rains in New Orleans, and we're looking at a messy commute, morning commute in Detroit tomorrow, and a warmer day in New York and Boston tomorrow. It's pretty cool today, about 10 degrees below the average. We've got a trough that's shutting off those Santa Ana winds in California. That's good news. Good luck to you firefighters in Southern California. But here's our area of severe weather threats in the Big Easy. And speaking of the Big Easy, it's going to be a messy commute for you, and plus flood watches are in effect. Stay with us on the Weather Channel.
Rain is on tap in areas from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast, and flooding threatens some areas. A full report is next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Touchstone Energy. We are America's electric cooperatives.
Partnership means growth. That's the way it's been for America's electric co-ops and America's businesses and communities. We've always kept affordable power flowing steadily and reliably. Now, we're joining other local co-ops to form a nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, to ensure state-of-the-art technology and personalized service. It's the power of human connections.
It's time now for Storm Watch, which is sponsored by Rayovac. Well, today still a chance for some hefty thunderstorms and still a chance for some localized flooding. And we'll check out that top weather story coming up in just a moment. First of all, though, let's see what's brewing in the tropics. It's time for the tropical update. And we want to, first of all, kind of look at the 1998 season thus far and see how it stacks up to normal. Well, so far it's been a rather active hurricane season. We've had 12 named storms so far. 7 of those have become hurricanes, and of those, 2 have become major hurricanes. And again, this is a little bit more active, more unusually active than the normal year would be. Normally you would only have 9 named storms with 6 hurricanes, so above average thus far. And you know what? We still have quite a ways to go with the hurricane season. Now, historically speaking, the peak of the hurricane season is September the 10th. But as you can see by our graphics here, we have a secondary peak that usually occurs during the middle or the latter part of October. So we are approaching now the secondary peak in the hurricane season. So by no means can we let down our guards just yet. We still have quite a ways to go in the hurricane season, and we'll be watching the situation very closely. Now, historically speaking and climatologically speaking, stemming back from 1886, we have had 84 storms that have formed during the first 10 days in October, and most of those have been concentrated throughout the western Atlantic, the central Atlantic too, but a large concentration has been forming across the western Caribbean and the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico. So these are the most favored areas for tropical development during this time of the year. And having said that, we do have a few points of interest in these regions. We see lots of clouds right now across the Gulf and across portions of the central Caribbean. And we also have this tropical system here. This is Tropical Storm Lisa. It's still more or less holding its own, packing winds of 50 miles per hour and moving off towards the northeast. Now, the good news with Lisa is that it's not really posing a threat to any land areas. And it looks as if Lisa may continue to weaken a little bit. We've had this huge trough of low pressure kind of digging in from the north and west of the tropical storm. And that trough of low pressure has been causing some very strong winds. So Lisa has had to deal with some very strong winds and the wind shear the last couple of days or so. And that is helping to prevent any further development from taking place with Lisa. So again, Lisa, no big concern, at least for the time being. Now here's a satellite perspective of Lisa. We can still see some bright convection, the brighter shades of oranges, indicating some heavier showers and thunderstorms in that general area. But we see most of the convection is mainly to the east of the center of circulation, because on the southwest and the western side, we are seeing that strong wind shear taking place across this region. Now, away from Lisa, we have another area of interest. A low pressure area has formed well to the west of Africa. And at least climatologically speaking, this is not a very favored area. However, it's something that certainly bears some watching as the low is maintaining itself and it continues to drift towards the west at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. A little closer to home, we check out the Caribbean, and right now most of the islands looking very, very nice, from Cuba back towards Hispaniola, Puerto Rico. You're looking at some fair skies this morning. And again, likewise, most of the Virgin Islands in pretty good shape. But farther towards the south, we've had this tropical wave producing some showers and some thunderstorms, and we'll have to watch that for the potential for some development. Right now, though, most of the clusters of showers and thunderstorms are fairly close to land, but there could be something trying to form here in the next few days or so, so we'll try to watch that rather closely. And always of interest is the Gulf of Mexico. And at this time being, we have a storm system slowly trying to work its way across the southeast. And part of that storm system has been firing off some showers and storms in the Gulf. And if they persist, there is a possibility that as these storms sit and fester, that they could eventually evolve into something tropical. So again, the Gulf of Mexico is also something that bears some watching. Now, across the lower 48, though, something that we're watching very closely is the possibility for more strong thunderstorms. Our front continues to slowly slip towards the east, and there could be some rough weather today lined up from Cleveland and Columbus, Ohio, all the way down towards New Orleans. And oftentimes these showers and thunderstorms are dropping locally heavy rain, and still flash flood watches remaining in effect. Stay tuned. We'll check out more for the potential for heavy rains this morning, the forecast, and much more coming up next.
This program was sponsored by Rayovac Rechargeable Alkaline.
Batteries.
Video games don't just blast through your batteries.
More batteries.
They blast through your money. That's why you should arm yours with Rayovac Maximum Alkaline. They pack long-lasting alkaline power but cost less, so you can buy more games.
How about a little one-on-one?
Uh-oh.
Get the Maximum. Rayovac Maximum.
It's Thrifty Car Rental's 40th birthday, so let's get the show on the road. Call 1-800-4CARS. There's something special.